Dear friends, welcome to the Priest Podcast, sponsored by the Napa Institute. You may not know it, but one of Napa's most meaningful efforts involves the formation and support of priests and religious. We have become fascinated by the stories of our clergy. Through this podcast, we want to bring you some of these amazing stories too, but in a way that is unique. Priests interviewing other priests from all walks of life and backgrounds. We think this series will be a great resource for everyone, those considering the priesthood, as well as those in active ministry who may be struggling or just looking for good ideas. But even the laity will benefit by learning more about the needs and thoughts of the clergy as we consider how to support and pray for them, given all they do for us. So sit back and enjoy this glimpse into the life and work of the priest. In today's episode, Father Michael Duffy will interview Father Matt Wheeler.
Hey everyone, my name is Father Michael Duffy, today's host for the Shepherd Circle podcast, produced by the Napa Institute. I'm delighted to welcome to the podcast Father Matt Wheeler of the Archdiocese of Los Angeles and the chaplain of the USC campus ministry program there. He was ordained a priest in 2018 and has since served as a parochial vicar, administrator, and now as campus chaplain. Really excited to hear him speak about his priestly experiences. Father Matt, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Father Michael. It's great to be here.
It's a joy. So you just had a big transition. Just a couple of months ago, you started this new job. Tell us about it.
That's right. So starting July 1st, I was made the administrator, quasi-pastor, however you want to look at it, the shepherd of campus ministry at USC.
Fantastic.
So one of the ways I describe it is like at a typical parish, when it comes to young people, like young adults, you are just trying to be creative. You're scrambling a little bit to connect with them. Where are they and how do we do, you put a lot of work into it and some come, but it's hard. And now I'm at campus ministry where the vast majority, I would say 90% of those coming to Mass, I would say 100% coming to our activities and events are students.
Right.
Young adults. It's awesome.
It's interesting because, in a parish setting, in a regular parish, like sometimes people they have to go, get religious ed, or these kids they're being intentional about going to Mass, right? They're choosing it on their own.
I'm really glad you brought that up because at one point, I can't remember, early on as I was just beginning, it hit me. I thought to myself, you know what? Every student in this church right now, they made a decision to be here. Like it was not mom and dad guilting them to go to church or dragging them into each one of them. Now they're there for different reasons, what motivated them, but they all had to literally stop whatever it is they were doing or plan in such a way that they are in the church right now. And I was like, you know what, Lord, I can work with that. That's awesome.
There's an intentionality about it. There's a hunger there. These people, they're thirsty for what you have to give them, which is the Lord, right?
Which is great, and it's true. I mean, we can be very critical about young generations. They're hopeless. What's going to happen? I mean, the church, oh God. But these young people are thirsting and hungering, and it's authentic. It's not just a show. It's not because we have to. They're longing.
And in a way, they're bucking the trend, right? Yeah. Because a lot of their peers aren't coming. So what's the Catholic population of USC? What do you think? What's the overall student population?
Yeah, good. No, it's pretty diverse. We draw from the country. We draw from the world, international. So it's not it's actually a private school. So University of Southern California is private. So it's not like a local California school, which would primarily draw from, California. Obviously, there's a lot of Californians, but it's pretty diverse. And then we typically estimate, as far as the number of Catholics, we extrapolate sort of a third of the student body. And there's approximately 20,000 undergraduates, 15,000 graduates, but most of our work is with undergrads because they're living right there. And so if you take a third of that, so what is that, around 6,000-ish, give or take, of those undergrads are Catholics. And so we're trying to reach out to them. We're trying to connect with them. I mean, everybody, right? But especially the Catholic students. And over the course of a weekend, we hover around 600, kind of between 600 and 700 students coming to Mass.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's exciting. So you're there as the new chaplain. It's an exciting role. You have a connection to the campus all yourself, don't you?
All right, so that's true, and it's a huge gift. I didn't realize actually how much of a blessing it would be, the fact that I actually graduated from USC myself.
Yeah.
So I started in, as a freshman, and I had no plans of being involved or really connected much more than Sunday Mass to the Catholic community at USC. But leaving home, where I'm from, Minnetonka, Minnesota, so like Twin Cities, Midwest, that trip to LA, it was hard because LA's just a totally different culture.
Yep.
It's a big place.
It's a different world.
It's a different world. And
So is that where it brought you to the Archdiocese of LA?
yeah, so college brought me to LA. And it was hard. I was just very homesick and lonely. And now looking back, I can see God used that experience of kind of, I would call it like turmoil, definitely anxiety, to move me in his direction. So to draw me to himself through the campus ministry at USC. So as a freshman, I connected and got to know some great Catholics that blew away like my stereotypes of like church people, it wasn't really my crowd in high school, right? So those stereotypes though were really done away with. And I could, these are cool people. These are smart people. These are good people, not perfect, but they're trying to grow in their relationship with God. And I realized this is what I needed.
So had you grown up in a Catholic household?
Yeah, thankfully. Oh, I mean, I'm super blessed. My parents are awesome. And most of my vocation is definitely their doing.
Sure.
It was not an oppressively religious environment. My parents, in a beautiful way, were very natural with the faith. And while they definitely had expectations of what it meant to live in their home as Catholics, there was a freedom. It wasn't weird or anything. And so it was an environment of faith. Definitely my mom, I think, is the one who carried most of that burden. Although my dad was like that silent presence, affirming, never discouraging. He was there. And I'm very grateful to that. So growing up in that household planted a lot of seeds that once I went to college, those came to fruition through different people and experiences.
So it was just a natural thing to then go to Mass on campus, right?
Yes. Yeah. I remember visiting. My mom, so funny. She made sure I knew where the Catholic Church was right there.
Good mom, yeah.
So speaking of dragging, she did. She kind of dragged me over there. I remember Father Lawrence, the pastor. She introduced me to him. All right, so this is the church. What's the schedule? And I'm grateful because it's true. As soon as I started, I was going to church there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was through that then I met people in the midst of my kind of homesickness. Right. And then the Catholic Center became a home away from home, really.
Yeah. Yeah, I say in my own life, the church became like another mother and another father to me, yes. Right? It provides something that we're yearning for, right? And being homesick, I was up at college, up at Fordham University, and it just became like not just another community, it became the center of my community. So talk to us a little bit about your vocation then. So you grew up in Minnesota, came from a Catholic background, came to campus. Were you thinking of priesthood already? Or?
No, so I was not. I was a business major.
Okay.
And I eventually majored in accounting. I've always been into music. And so I actually thought in the back of my head, maybe I'll get into a band, rock and roll.
Yeah, is that right? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's maybe in a band, who knows? It's LA.
Dream big.
Dream big. So, but as soon as I got there, like I said, I just kind of went through this existential crisis of sorts, like, what is my purpose? What is my meaning here? Like, Lord. And it drew me to God. And that began definitely a more intentional journey with the Lord. And through that, which entailed friendship, growing in friendship, it entailed getting to know the priest, Father Lawrence. He was a good presence and just kind of a fatherly figure in the midst of that difficulty. We had some good conversations, learning more about my faith. It was a time where I could ask questions that were maybe on my heart, but for whatever reason, I wasn't comfortable asking, and just kind of getting things out and into the open. And that was kind of the initial phase. Learning to be more generous with my time. Any parish, as you well know, needs a lot of help.
Right.
And if there's a young, eager beaver there, like ready to...
We're going to tap them, yeah.
Like, I was, tapped for a lot of things. And so I was learning generosity, giving of myself and my time, and all of that began to arouse within me a sense, well, what about the priesthood? It did start coming, I would say, in my sophomore year.
Okay, yep.
But I was not confident in that. It just was kind of there. But then I was also thinking, well, now that my faith is more important, what would it be like to have a Catholic girlfriend?
Yeah, sure.
Someone who can really support you, and we can grow together but I hadn't really met anybody. So I was kind of in the middle of these worlds, marriage and priesthood.
But that's the best kind of discernment, isn't it? It's not like you were just focused on one. You had a good balance of that discernment then.
Yeah, God was working, and all the options were kind of there. Eventually, I specified accounting as my major, which moves very fast. So you do an internship one summer, and you already have a job offer for the next.
Oh, wow.
So it just, so the vocational questions.
It was there.
Yeah, it was there. Like, what am I going to do with my life? And one thing I want to comment on is, as I was saying, I was kind of in this middle ground of, priesthood, marriage. I'm helping out at the Catholic Center, and yet I don't have clarity. I feel like something's missing. I feel like I'm doing all the right things, but where is the Lord in a deeper way? And once again, this is around my sophomore year, and I started to sense like there must be more to it. I think I am missing something, and this is where I met a priest who became my spiritual director.
Yep.
And he introduced me to the interior life, and really the life of grace,
right,
and the sacramental life. And he really challenged me, like, yeah, you might be doing a bunch of great things, but at the end of the day, it's not just about doing a bunch of great things or like the right things. It's about a relationship which is real. And you actually grow in that through slowing down, like doing a little bit less and giving your heart to the Lord in prayer. And so that's when like regular confession started coming in, regular spiritual counsel, daily mass started coming in, mental prayer. And that's where on a deeper level, I started eventually to sense, I think God's calling me to be a priest. And
so was there any one particular priest that really assisted you in that, or that was your inspiration to the priesthood?
Yes. So once again, early on, Father Lawrence was a great presence, kind of welcoming me in. And then that spiritual director I just mentioned, his name is Father Luke Mata.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And so Father Luke had just arrived in LA. And as you know, he's got a lot of energy. He's a go-getter, and he's like out, he's wonderful. So Father Luke would come, because he's more over near UCLA, rivals, but he would very generously come over to USC with regularity, and myself and some other of the guys, we'd meet with him. And so that his presence, his pastoral zeal, and like I said, his emphasis on the interior life of prayer was the game changer.
He's remarkable, just as I know him as a friend, and he's the kind of guy that he's so genuinely holy, but he's such a man's man. Like he could beat the snot out of you.
Oh yeah.
He's pulled me and said, Michael, what are you doing? Come on, like smack you around. And sometimes as men we need that, right?
Well, I joke with him because his last name is Mata, and the word to kill in Spanish is matar, and he's Spanish, so mata, like kill. He's the killer. He will whip you into shape. He will call your bluff. And as a young student at USC with my plan and all my aspirations and desires, as confused as I was a driven person. I think he challenged me, and he spoke into my kind of superficiality and really said, you know what, you got to go deeper. But he was there to journey with me. So he was there to walk with me in that. So he didn't just challenge and kind of throw me off to the side.
Right.
He's like, hey, I see this, but I'm here. I want to work with you. And by God's grace, I was humble enough to do that with him. I'm super grateful.
So you discerned a vocation. You decided to enter the seminary. You wound up going to St. John's in Camarillo. What was your seminary experience like?
Yes. So I remember the first day of seminary.
Tell us, yeah.
And I was just coming off of World Youth Day in Madrid. I had joined a group of college students. We went to World Youth Day.
Pouring rain, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Epic. Yeah. It was like Lord of the Rings, bad water,
Yeah.
But then the way back was delayed. And I remember we got in at like 2 a.m. or something, and I was supposed to be at the seminary by 10 a.m. that morning. Anyway, I just got delayed, and my luggage was lost. And so I arrived late to the first day of seminary. I got there like halfway through lunch, which was like around 12:30, and I was like, oh no, what am I going to do? And blah, 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 blah. But I remember getting there, and there was a priest and a seminarian, and Father Jack was the priest who was kind of with that seminarian welcome, and they were still there, and they just gave me this amazing welcome. Hey, welcome. Don't worry, you're late. Don't even worry about that. Go get some lunch. And I would say that like moment captures a bit of what my experience was in total at the seminary, which is one of great fraternity.
Yeah.
I loved the seminary, just being with the guys and growing together. They say iron sharpeth iron, right?
Sure.
You're like a bunch of rocks in a bag, and you shake the bag, and you kind of smoothing out the rough edges. You also get like to just delve into what we believe, the academic life and studying our faith. Gosh, I mean, it's such a gift to have the protected time for prayer, and our chapel's beautiful at St. John's. It was just like very, it was awesome.
You know, I love that idea, iron sharpens iron, and the bag of rocks, because as men, sometimes we need other guys to tell us, hey, dude, you're weird. You need to shape up a little bit. Like, dude, you smell. Stuff like that. So being with other seminarians who just necessarily become like your best friends, having them nearby in that formative phase, especially with that human formation, it might hurt, but it's so important, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. No man is an island, right? We're not meant to do this alone.
Yeah.
And sometimes I would say, kind of on your way to the seminary, you feel alone a little bit. There's not like a bunch of guys thinking about becoming priests. And sometimes you can feel a little isolated when you get into that environment and you realize, wait, I'm not alone. And there's joy in that. There's suffering in that, because it's, you got a real encounter, right? And that's not always easy, like you were saying, but it's fruitful.
Have you been able to find a way to carry that fraternity out of the seminary?
So, yeah, I mean, I'm blessed. I have like a priest support group.
You do? Okay.
I do. Honestly, I couldn't imagine being a priest without that.
So what does that mean? What does that look like? How many guys do you meet with? How often is it and stuff?
So this is called the Priestly Society of the Holy Cross. It's like a priest support group for diocesan priests. So we're all parish priests in LA. And on the one hand, we pray for each other. There's just like this common, conviction that like we need each other, which is just in and of itself a blessing. But more practically, we get together once a week.
Oh, wow.
And during that meeting, we, coffee and just kind of shooting the breeze and just a check-in. Also time for dedicated prayer. And there's usually a little like formational talk or two. And then there's time allotted for going to confession and getting a little kind of spiritual direction. So it sounds like a lot, right? Every week? It's like, what? You get together every week?
How do you coordinate that with your days off and stuff? Yeah.
So that's a challenge. That's a challenge. Fortunately, this group's been growing. So we have 2 opportunities for that weekly gathering. And they're kind of set. So you do have to commit. I mean, and we all do our best. Obviously, as parish priests, things come up. Surprises, the unforeseen, whatever.
Right.
And there's accommodations for that. You do your best. Right. But we've all, like I said, kind of made this commitment to be there. We got to support each other. You got to make it happen. As you well know, priestly fraternity does not just, quote unquote, happen. You have to be very intentional. On a monthly basis, we have a day of recollection, which is more like an afternoon, evening of recollection, which is like a mini retreat for us to come together. And that's not just for those of us in our support group. It's any priest who wants to come to that, comes to the day of recollection. In LA, we have a little retreat center for priests, for only priests.
Really?
The Cardinal Manning House of Prayer for Priests.
Okay.
Great resource. So that's where we have our monthly day of recollection. And then we have an annual retreat, like silent retreat.
Okay.
That we do, open to any priest, which is one of my highlights, like favorite times of the year.
Is that right? Yeah.
Just quiet down, open your heart to the Lord for, kind of more intense prayer. It's a great time to kind of plan, a little check-in, like where am I? Where have I been? Where am I going this year? And then there's also ongoing formation that's a part of this. Good. So on an annual basis. So there's definitely commitment there. But like I said, I couldn't imagine life without it. Super blessed.
Right. I mean, all that foundation, the spiritual foundation, the fraternal foundation, the formation, it prepares you for priesthood, right? It prepares you for the unknown.
Yes.
So tell us about your priesthood. What's it been like? You were ordained in 2018.
Yeah.
You had a great first assignment, St. Anthony's. What kind of parish was it?
So St. Anthony's, I figure the way I describe it is like St. Anthony's is like a snapshot of LA.
Okay.
LA is a very diverse place.
Yeah.
You get a little bit of everything. While most of the parishioners at St. Anthony's are Spanish speaking, a little bit older Latino crowd, you get it all.
Do you speak Spanish, Father?
I speak Spanish. Okay. That's been one goal. Father Luke.
Yeah.
The killer, right?
Yeah.
One of the things he emphasized the moment I really said, all right, I'm going the priesthood route, he said, you have to learn Spanish. And he really supported and challenged me to learn it as best I can. Obviously, I'm not a native speaker, right?
Right.
I do my best, but it's been a priority, so much so that I could go to a parish where there's a lot of Spanish. The neighborhood, though, is Chinese.
Really?
The street signs, yeah, because there was like a whole demographic shift. So the neighborhood and the surrounding area is very Asian. There was a vibrant Vietnamese community at St. Anthony's, but there's Filipinos, there's Anglos, you get it all. So I appreciated that diversity and just a wealth of experience in that first assignment.
Yeah.
I also appreciated the pastor, who's a great mentor.
Was there a school or?
School, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So like many Catholic schools, it was kind of struggling. It was able to grow a lot, kind of surprisingly, but great principle, a team effort, you might say. Right.
So you mentioned your first pastor. Oftentimes they say that you become your first pastor.
Yes.
Would that be a good thing?
That would be a good thing. Yeah. No, I mean, Father Austin, Monsignor Austin, he's just a wonderful man. And I think the word that really captures him, and it really is a part of his whole spirituality, is like compassion. He just has a very compassionate heart, and people see it. It's not fake. And when you're welcomed into that compassionate heart, it's like the Sacred Heart of Jesus. It's a great place to be. If I could be like Monsignor Austin, I mean, that'd be that'd be a real blessing. He just was very attentive, He's a mentor like that. He can listen to me, and he prioritized time with me to like help guide me. Yeah, he wasn't aloof and out just doing his own thing. He's a father in that sense.
Fantastic. That's a gift for us as young priests to have a mentor, but a role model, right? So many guys, they struggle with their assignments or with their first pastors, and it's a both end thing. It's like it's not just the pastor's fault. It could be our fault too, and but to have the gift of a good first pastor, it's worth its weight in gold.
And that's what it is, a gift. I mean, I couldn't have asked for a better pastor at that first assignment. So I was there for 4 years.
Yeah.
And then I was made the administrator of Visitation Parish in Westchester, which is the west side. That's like
Not Westchester, New York.
No, Westchester, California. Yeah. It's in LA, the city of Los Angeles, technically. It's like a little sub area. On the north side of LAX airport. So if you've ever been to LAX, airplanes going down and constantly. The parish is just on the north side. So we get a lot of visitors because people will Google Catholic Church as they're traveling. Yeah. And we're the closest one. So a lot of people come for Mass or whatever to pray. That was a great experience. First time like being in charge, as administrator, quasi-pastor.
Were you living alone or?
No, I was blessed once again to have a good community of priests. Yeah. There was the pastor emeritus.
Okay.
There was a retired priest who'd been a pastor many years. There was an in-residence priest. And then, believe it or not, in addition to us, there was another priest who was also kind of in residence in a home that we owned, kind of next to the rectory, so to speak. So it was like 5 priests.
So you come in as a young 4-year ordained priest, and you got the retired pastor was still there.
He was still there.
Retired priest,
And I think part of the thought there was kind of, he's only been a priest for 4 years. It is a big jump to become an administrator, but he has support around him.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful to the pastor emeritus. He was not trying to cast a shadow. There wasn't like some subtle power play going on.
That could be a tricky thing, yeah.
Tricky, but he was pretty, he was a real gentleman about it. And, he would continue to celebrate Masses, but yeah, he was good. I miss him. I think he's a holy man, and I'm grateful to the help I've received from him.
Right. So you were there for 2 years?
2 years. There was a school there.
Okay, wow.
And like I said, it's the west side. That's more a wealthier side, near the beach and all that. So there's all sorts of dynamics that come into play in a community like that. So very different than St. Anthony's. But nonetheless, these are people, and everyone needs our Lord.
Right, and But as the administrator, there's more responsibilities than just being a parochial vicar, right?
Correct.
So how'd you handle that transition into budgets and HR policies and dealing with the school and stuff as a young priest, right?
Yes. Well, I guess one way so you go and you don't know really what you're doing. I mean, you're just feeling it out. I mean, you have a general sense, but you need help. And if you're willing to seek out that help, I think it's there in abundance. Whether that's from, in our case, the Archdiocese of Los Angeles. We're broken into regions, so I could always reach out to, the regional deacon and regional bishop for support or insight. I actually had a mentor pastor assigned to me.
Yeah.
He was someone I was able to reach out to and get help from regularly. And then just like going to the business manager and being like, hey, help me understand this. I don't know what I'm looking at. Can you walk me through this a little bit? Or even the principal at the school.
Yeah. I mean, it takes a lot of humility to do that, because everyone looks to you like, dude, you're in charge. You got to have your stuff together. Correct. And the reality is we show up after 4 or 5 years of ordination and like, I've never looked at a budget before. I've never looked at a ledger,
Because it's super easy to be like having a beer with your priest friends and like just calling the shots. If I were a pastor, I would do this. And why don't they do that? Like, that's super easy. But once you're actually in the driver's seat and people's eyes they're like looking at you, it's much more difficult, and you want to preserve unity, but you also have a vision and you want to push forward. So it's this delicate fear can come in.
Did your college studies with accounting help out at all?
It did. There's a familiarity there that I'm very grateful for. But oftentimes people think I know more than I do. I mean, I studied accounting a long time ago, and it's kind of a little bit in one ear and out the other.
Yeah, sure.
But the familiarity does go a long way. It's not like a foreign language, So that's been helpful.
Yeah. So it's a huge transition into that, and then you get the surprise, of a lifetime a couple of months ago, right?
And it was a surprise, because I was looking at actually becoming pastor. That's like a 6-year term at visitation. But then the opportunity to come to USC was presented, and absolutely. I mean, to go back to this place that was so formative and instrumental in my life and my vocation, and now to journey with college students along those, absolutely. Sign me up.
Yeah.
So it's really cool.
So you show up in July as the
July 1st.
July 1st as a new administrator there.
Yes.
What's that first couple of weeks like? I mean, there are no college kids on campus, right?
Quiet, super quiet.
You're in the planning phase, or?
So I knew that coming in, that, it's summertime, it's pretty quiet. I had visited in the weeks prior, kind of moving in a little bit, having some conversations. And so it's like, oh yeah, it is a stripped down mass schedule and just it's very quiet. So I figured, this is the time to get to know the staff, right? And kind of prioritize, just listening and talk to me. What do you do and what do you enjoy? And also we have an advisory board. So these are, many of them are USC grads, Catholics, who care about our campus ministry and are in a position to help us in a variety of ways, resources, financially, also gifts and skills that they have.
Right.
I was like, it's a time to get to know them as well. So trying to reach out, and I've got people to help me do that. Super blessed. So relationship, prioritizing people in the early phases. I learned after my first assignment, because you go in as a new priest, you're pretty nervous and you don't want to mess up. And in my case, there was like an emphasis to prioritize perfection. So studying the rites and making sure, and what am I going to say in my homily, and making sure everything's all ironed out, and how do I do that right, this or that. And I learned, in the early days, don't worry so much about, people will be pretty forgiving as long as it's not like an egregious.
Yeah. And if you're nice, they forgive. Yeah.
People early on, that can come back, the first impression matters. So like prioritizing people. And so going into this, I thought to myself, prioritize people, not perfection, and just God is going to iron all this out.
I had a mentor in my own life that used to say to us, gentlemen, kindness will forgive a multitude of sins. The people will forgive a bad homily if you're kind to them.
Yes.
Right? If you smile, if you're generous,
Sounds like wise advice to me. Right. I think it's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what was it like that the end of August with the kids showing up on campus, is it like a tsunami that, it just...
So although I began on July 1st, it really felt like I began, I think it was, August 19th.
Right.
When the first weekend that the students were back, classes started on Monday. That's where you really sense, okay, this is what the ministry's about. And we're super blessed. There's a great staff at USC, at the Caruso Catholic Center. And what I mean by great staff is they're mission-driven. So they really care about Jesus, they care about the church, they care about students, and they just want to use their gifts and their talents to bring people into greater relationship with God and the church. And so that's inspiring, and they do great work. So I'm kind of coming into something. My predecessor, great priest, Father Richard Sunwoo.
Yeah.
He'd done a lot of good work over the years that he was there. So I'm very much grateful, coming into something that's a lot of good. So it's about kind of, all right, continuing that good, but nothing's perfect. So then improving in different ways. We have 6 focused missionaries as part of our staff. So
wow.
I love them. They're apostolic.
6.
Yes.
Most places have 4.
Most places have 4.
That's incredible.
Yeah, we're in a position that they can do 6, and we'll take. Hey, give me 7 or 8. I mean, come on, bring them on.
I mean, I'm sure a lot of the listeners are, but as well, I am so bought in on the Focus mission, on their style. Yes. They are so effective. I'm working on bringing them into my parish.
Well, that's a good idea.
Missionaries. Just that little way of evangelization. Tell us a little bit about what it's been like working with them.
Well, one thing, and the first thing I'm really inspired by is their commitment to prayer. Yeah. I mean, they are rooted in their personal relationship with Jesus and the fact that, I can't give what I don't have. So if I'm not connected with our Lord through prayer and on the level of grace, through the sacraments, then I'm not going to be any good for these students. And I might even lead them away from Christ if I'm not faithful to that first relationship. So that's a good reminder to me. Same thing as priests, as a Catholic in general, right? You got to be, with our Lord. He wants to be with us. And from there, we do ministry and apostolate and outreach. So I love that about them. And then second, they will talk to anybody. They will, honestly, they are super outgoing, and they will talk to anyone. In fact, they want to meet new people. And I love that apostolic spirit. They want to reach out, and they prioritize relationships. And it's not just a conveyor belt of quote unquote ministry. They want to build connections, grow relationships, and then help those they've met, the friends that they've made, do the same thing.
I love that about them. Cardinal Dolan a couple of years ago talked about, what does it mean to be a fisher of men? Are we just cleaning and fishing within our own little fishbowl in the fish tank? Yes. Or are we going into the ocean, Especially in the parishes, we're so used to just dealing with the people that we already have. Focused missionaries go out and try to get the ones that are out in the ocean,
Well said. I think a temptation for me or my campus ministry team is to kind of, utilize, capitalize on the great gifts of the focused missionaries and pull them into our ministry and what we're doing. Obviously, they're there to serve, and they are generous in helping us, but you have to be careful not to pull them away from what they're really there to do, which is to reach out.
Right.
And that's what they do best, right? Building new relationships, not on your parish property, to go on campus and to go into dorms.
And that will necessarily, over time, feed into campus ministry, right? Because it builds a hunger for the sacraments.
It helps you grow, and it helps... Oh, absolutely, yeah. We're not working in opposition. We are working in complementary ways towards the same end.
Yeah. Father, what are your dreams? What are your goals for USC?
Absolutely. So on the one hand, I think something we do well, and I want to continue doing, is what I would call the great welcome. Yeah. Be a place where, kind of the way I've been putting it is, I hope that the Caruso Catholic Center can be a place where students... It's a Christ-centered home away from home where students are seen, known, and loved. That we can take anyone, no matter where they've been or what their history is, and we can make them feel loved and welcomed here. This is a place for them. Yeah. But then begs the question, where do you lead them to? You welcome them, but then what do you offer them? And my hope is, and I've been inspired by Focus, to really think and be intentional, all right, what's the next step? After the welcome, like what's the next step? And then what's the step after that? How do we develop like a clear path of formation so that they are growing and being nurtured at every stage of discipleship, so that when they graduate and they leave our community, they are they're ready. They may not be perfect, but they are ready to engage God, God's will, and the world in faith.
And finally, Father Matt, if you had a young guy on campus thinking about the priesthood, just open to a possibility, what would you tell him?
As was true for me, the life, interior life of prayer and grace. If you can dedicate 30 minutes a day, and you might have to start at 5, but you grow little by little to 30 minutes a day of like quiet time with the Lord, mental prayer, meditation, whatever word you want to use for conversation with God. This is where the Lord reveals his love and his will in deeper ways. Fight for that time, guard that time, and you'll see God's going to guide you.
That's awesome. It's been a great chance today to talk with Father Matt Wheeler of the Archdiocese of Los Angeles about his own priestly vocation, about his life and work, especially about what he's doing up at USC on campus there, especially with the Focus Missionaries. Imagine what it would be like if we had more priests like him. That's why the Lord Jesus urges each of us to pray to the Harvest Master for more laborers for his harvest. So please join us in praying for shepherds after Jesus' heart, and encourage the young men you know who show signs of a vocation to ask Jesus in prayer whether our Lord might be calling them to serve him, the church, and the world as ordained priests. Please check back next week for an interview with another hardworking priest in the vineyard of the Lord. I'm Father Duffy, a priest of the Diocese of Rockville Center, and it's been a delight to be your host today on the Shepherd Circle podcast. God bless.
Thanks again for joining us today. For more information about how you can join us in supporting our work with clergy and religious, go to napa-institute.org. May God bless you this day and always.